I'm author and critic David Agranoff. I'm a horror and science fiction author, critic, and researcher. In this podcast, I wanted to provide in-depth interviews and panel discussions with everyone from New York Times bestselling authors to researchers, musicians, and anyone I find interesting. Welcome to Postcards from a Dying World. Hello and welcome to another episode of Postcards from a Dying World. I am still trying to figure out my space here at the new apartment, but this is the first episode recorded here. So we're going to start with Strange New World Season 3. We're a little late doing this breakdown, but we had to mentally prepare ourselves for talking about this season. But my normal bridge crew is here, and it's funny the amount of people I asked to be a fourth chair on this who said I can't say anything positive, and I'm like, you don't have to. But like, so many people were like, I just don't even want to talk about it, which was, and look, we'll get into it real quickly, but we're coming from people, at least in my camp, like season 1 of Strange New Worlds for me was a 9 out of 10 good. And I didn't quite buy into this savior of Star Trek thing since Discovery was awesome. And and I will say I went to the Science Fiction Across Media conference in LA last week, and there was a woman who gave a paper on Zora, the computer from Discovery. And I was horrified that the only person in the Q&A who basically sounded like they knew Discovery and was engaging with this paper was me. And but it gave me a newfound respect for Discovery, because in the context of having just finished the season, I was like, there was no season of Discovery I hated this much. So I mean, that's just for starters. But anyways, I'm babbling. I haven't introduced my crew. Joining us from the other side of the planet, we have 3 time zones right now, which is really fun and interesting. But I have the least interesting space for this. Joining us from an 800-year-old room, Guinan could have been in that room 800 years ago. And joining us from Europe, Sara Lynn Michener. Welcome back to Postcards from a Dying World. Anything you want to say in your introduction?
Or Pelia, who is actually the shining light of this show, I think. Carol Kane is wonderful. But yeah, no, it's I have escaped the United States because I'm an anxious person, and anxious people are the survivors of history. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I Malta is the easiest to the process is very transactional. Feel free to send me a message if you're interested, compared to some other countries
Right.
that we mentioned. But yeah, so I'm in Malta for a bit.
All right. And the person not on land right now, Issa.
Yeah, I'm on a boat. It's a storm. There's like a big storm rolling up the East Coast right now. I'm in Norfolk, Virginia, and it's also king tide this weekend, so the everything's flooding, so it's awesome. But on a boat, you just rise with the tide.
So if we see you
Just like
You have a
trickle down
Pikachu.
economics,
yeah.
Yeah.
You're not far from where you grew up though now, so
No, I'm about 4 hours drive from DC, so at some point I'll go visit. But yeah, we're heading south. Well, we're fixing up the boat, and then we're heading south towards warmer ports once hurricane season is over, and then we'll see how it goes.
okay. Always interesting where Issa is at one time or another. But yeah, and so next time we speak on these topics will be Starfleet Academy. So we'll be who knows where you will be at that point.
Yeah. And
So
it could be anywhere. Yeah.
I'm still in San Diego, but obviously in
But a new apartment.
but a new apartment. Yeah. Um, and part of the idea of getting a newer, cheaper place was so we can travel around California. So you should know that I will just put it out there. One of the reasons why I'm going to be traveling around California a lot is next year we're doing the Philip K. Dick Festival in California, and I am doing all kinds of mini conferences at the different academic institutions around Southern California. So using a lot of Amtrak to get around there, including, and keep your eyes peeled for this, we're going to do a 100th birthday party for Amazing Stories magazine at the University of California, Riverside, where they have a complete collection of the first year of Amazing Stories, which is not easy to have. So from 1926, which is pretty cool, and all kinds of cool stuff going on with that next year. So keep your eyes peeled for that stuff, because if you're around Southern California, we're going to have all kinds of, because that's technically the 100th birthday of science fiction fandom. And I got in trouble for saying it's the 100th birthday of science fiction. It's science fiction fandom, as it were. Yes, I know the genre has existed for hundreds of years. It just didn't have a name until 100 years ago. So, anyways, that's happening. That's going to be going on. So keep your eyes peeled for that. All kinds of fun stuff for that. And the last episode of this podcast that was recorded here was recorded at SFAM, and that's a panel on Severance, which Issa has not even watched, which is insanity because it's very good. And so if you want to backtrack for that, they will have 2 episodes on TV in a row, which is weird for me. But that's how it happens sometimes. All right, so let's get into, we'll give our general thoughts, and then we'll go episode by episode as we always do. And that's when things will probably get super ugly. And let me just say this. I was very excited for season 3, even though a year out, they showed a clip at New York Comic Con, which they just did in the last weekend for season 4, by the way. But the clip from season 3 was from 3.5 Vulcans, and immediately was a
4.5, right?
4.5, whatever.
Yeah,
and that clip scared the crap out of me because it was so terrible and racist and awful and just real bad. And so, but I had tried to put that out of my mind, and season 3 came, and the first episode was fine. The second episode was where we started to see the problems. And in my opinion, if I have a general overall thought, the comedy to straight science fiction scale was way off. If you have 26 episodes to do Star Trek, right, you can do more comedy. But when you only have 10 and you do almost 50% comedy, and then comedy that doesn't even make sense in universe, it just ruins a whole season for me.
And it wasn't even comedy. It was like romantic farce. It was like ridiculous.
Yeah. And it gave me a sense or a feeling that they did not understand the assignment of Star Trek. It did not feel like Star Trek to me in a lot of senses. And I hate saying that because I hate when the macho uber stupid fans say it doesn't feel like Star Trek. And this is the first time where I actually felt that way watching it myself. It didn't completely ruin the experience for me. There were a couple episodes that I liked. There's a couple things that I think they're setting up that could potentially fix a lot of the problems that I have with the canon issues of Strange New Worlds, which we'll get into. And we should keep in mind that if you have not watched the season, do not continue to watch this because we're going to spoil everything.
It's unspoilable. I'm just going to say it's unspoilable. But technically, this is spoilers.
Yeah. And listen, and I'm a big Brandon Braga defender. I'm one of the few people that really thinks he was one of the better writers of Star Trek. And I know a lot of people don't feel that way. And yes, I'm biased because I'm friends with the guy, but Brandon recently said on, I think it was the Star Trek cruise or it was Star Trek Las Vegas, but he was doing one of those big events. and he complained about the 10 episode. Like somebody asked him why he doesn't watch new Star Trek, and he said that it's that they need longer seasons, and that these 10 episode seasons are like Tinder dating, is what he compared it to, which, you know, it was kind of a crude metaphor, but I see what he's saying. And what he was basically saying was you don't have enough time to get to know the characters. And I think one of the major problems with Strange New Worlds is that Strange New Worlds assumes that we know the characters like we've seen 26 hours of them, and we haven't. And that works sometimes for Spock and Pike and some of the people we've seen a little bit over time. But yeah, I don't know. That's my first initial feelings, is that it felt like speed dating, and I really felt the 10 episodes here in a way that I never did on Discovery. I thought
I'm so happy to hear that, because my objections were very different, and so I'm curious to hear as we go forward how we compare. Because I didn't mind.
Oh,
I
I'm just
actually thought
I'm
the
just
characters
touching
are all
the
great.
surface of the iceberg. I got lots of
Okay.
big problems. Sarah, overall thoughts first off before we get into it. Tip of the
So
iceberg stuff.
as I try not to be hard on writers of any group of people. I think one of the problems overall is that we are past the multiple golden ages of television that we have had. The golden age, and then the new golden age, and then the new golden age. We're done. Because we've gotten to a point in streaming where everything has to have a homogenized quality to it in order to be successful. And that means that we are no longer watching shows that are the vision of the small group of people who are putting that together. We are watching shows that are made by focus groups. We are watching shows that are, possibly even just, even if they don't admit to it, might be using a little bit of AI in there somewhere. This show has so much more exposition in it. When it comes to all the character development, almost all of it happens through exposition. Some major thing will happen in the relationships between characters. We don't even get to see it. They bring it up and they talk about it. They're constantly talking like they're at the therapist, right? Which is one of the things that I find so funny, is that, I know that I'm going to get backlash for this. This show would not exist if it were not for the racist backlash against Discovery. And so it pleases me in some very dark way that this show at times makes Discovery look like fucking Shakespeare. Okay? Because the things that they complained about with Discovery are true about this show, magnified by 100. I mean, they have people who are
Absolutely.
giving these mental health speeches in the middle of, including characters that it wouldn't make sense for them to do that, like Spock.
Yeah.
Um, Spock is 90% human, 10% Vulcan. They've just decided that he's Vulcan or he's human, depending on the needs of the story that they want to tell that day. There is no consistency whatsoever. And I'm pro, hey, this franchise should change according to decade. I am pro change. When Discovery came out and people were actually complaining that it looked modern, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Do you want them to have computers that are made out of wood and string? No. And so, like, I want that to change, but I want the show to be consistent within itself. And this show is not consistent within itself at all. The show itself has ADHD. It's all over the place.
Yeah. Issa.
So I I don't know where to begin. I feel like I had different complaints than Sarah too, which is great. That makes this way more interesting than us just all saying this episode or this season sucked. Now we can all say why it sucked for different reasons. They, first of all, they did the Discovery thing. The Discovery mental health conversation problem was definitely in this episode, in this season. And they did, we call it the 10 seconds MacGruber kind of thing, where
Yeah.
they didn't used to do that, as far as I remember, where it would be like, this is about to blow up, we're in this super urgent situation, let's have a deep, meaningful conversation about something totally random. This season of Stranger Worlds did that, which kind of threw me off. I'm gonna go slightly differently and talk about the things I did like. And I really liked the characters. I thought they, except for Spock's human Vulcanness, that was a little rough. I feel like their whole thing is maybe Spock was younger and still finding his stride and trying on different things, which is fair enough, but it is kind of all over the place. Um I love Scotty. I love Scotty and Pelia. I liked all the characters. The relationship stuff with Spock and Chapel and with Spock and Lan was so annoying. It just felt so un-Star Trek to me. Like when, most of it felt pretty Star Trek. I really I was not I didn't have the feeling that David was talking about, that it was un-Star Trek, but it felt, that part of it was just like gratingly bad. And the most interesting thing about the season for me was that my wife decided to join me in watching it. And I have never been so embarrassed in my life. She's like, "This is the show you've been saying good things about." And I was just like, "Oh man." She started on the 4.5 Vulcan episode. That was her first episode.
Oh
No,
no.
it was not, she's not a Star Trek fan. She's aware of it. She
Well,
doesn't
now you got to show her something good.
I
Like,
mean, I don't know. Do you think I can? Like, if this was what you watched, would you watch another season? I don't think so. So
well,
it might
okay.
be
Well, and the relationship thing too is a prime example of what Sarah was talking about, of how like they did things in exposition.
yeah,
And I didn't rewatch the season for this discussion, but I rewatched a couple episodes here and there just to refresh my memory. And like Chapel and Lahan walking down the hallway, and then I know you and Spock have been hanging out a lot.
totally.
Uh, and it's like, well, we don't really see it. And by the way, I think the What is Starfleet episode is a crime against nature on
Yes, we will
in
get to
many
that.
things.
I'm so excited to talk about that.
That one is a crime against nature, and I think the 4.5 Vulcans and the What is Starfleet are two of the worst episodes of Star Trek ever made in any show. I mean, I'll put them up there with. I mean, I would rather watch Spock's brain than than uh
Yeah,
than those
those were
episodes,
really especially bad. Those
especially bad. And we'll get there. And
Hmm.
um
Yeah, can I just, I mean, so the fact that they wasted the chemistry that exists between Chapel and Spock the past two seasons. First season was great concerning their relationship. Second and third season, horrible. And like, again, like their whole relationship is happening through exposition. So when they're acting like they dated for a full year or something, and it becomes very cringe because then they're like talking to each other like, "Oh, is it okay?" Like they're talking about ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend that were dating for a really long time. They dated for like an episode, like a one full episode, and it was one of the things that drove me crazy about last season, because it was like this whole build up, then they date for one episode, and then they immediately break up for no reason. And and like I wasn't excited about this season because I didn't like the last season that much. And there'll be like one or two really good episodes per season, so I'm like, okay, so I always watch. And don't get me wrong, I love these actors as people. I love their performances, but the writing is just so bad. And they, like he emotes 1 second very well, as if he's human, and then he can't emote at all the next because he's like, "Oh, I'm a Vulcan, I can't do that." Like, bitch, you just gave a very impassioned, very beautiful, very human speech, and you're experiencing jealousy all the time. You're experiencing all of these human emotions. It's it's such a waste of good, wonderful actors. And Gregory Peck's very fine grandson.
yeah. And I and listen, like one weird thing for me, and this timing for me of just because I'll be randomly watching. Okay, my method of randomly watching old Star Trek is very weird. Since I discovered that almost all the series are that they have channels on Pluto for free, that a lot of times if I've got to take a nap or whatever, I will just spin up whatever. I'll look at the four channels on Pluto, and whether there's I'll be like, okay, today there's a Voyager I want to watch, or today there's a Next Gen I want to watch. and I've been randomly sampling Star Trek for like the last month or two, like throughout the canon. But in the last week, I've been rewatching Enterprise season 3, which is just really weird and random. And it has its problems, right? It has lots of problems, but the storytelling is pretty on point, right? And so I, I get a little bit, I'm just putting that context out there for right now. I randomly will just like, one day I'll be like, oh, here's an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation season 3, and I'm going to watch it. Or today I'm going to watch Voyager from season 6 or whatever. So I randomly have like these examples. So when I say something doesn't feel like Star Trek, part of my thing is that a couple times a week I'll just randomly pull up at total random Star Trek. And when you do that, you get a very strong sense for, you know, warts and all, what like the 90s Berman era was. And you definitely get the better with Deep Space Nine, where it was divorced a little bit from the Berman of it all. But, it really makes it brings it. I just want that context out there for what when I'm saying that I didn't feel like this was Star Trek. All right,
This is
so
the
let's.
first time I did catch myself thinking this doesn't feel like Star Trek, which is
Yeah,
really
me too.
like
Me
the
too.
first time that's ever happened because often, and I've said this before, that the love language of loving Star Trek is also loving the fact that it's occasionally terrible. And so often when it's at its worst, it feels the most like Star Trek.
Yeah. Well,
Not
like
this time.
take the worst episode, some of the worst, like considered worst episodes of Voyager, like Threshold, right? It still feels like Star Trek,
Yeah.
you know,
The
whether,
perfect example of this for me was when I don't even remember who it was. I think it was Lon was sitting there talking to number one, and she's like I didn't want to make it weird with Spock. Oh, I just made it weird. Like that's like something you'd see on like The Big Bang Theory or like some sitcom. Like it's
And
just
these are
not.
middle school romances because they
Yeah,
literally just
exactly,
started dating. They
exactly.
dated for one episode, and then Spock will be upset about one girl, and then the very next girl he's hooking up with somebody else. I'm like, what is this? Like Starfleet
Yeah,
90210? Like what
seriously, it's
is
so
happening?
un-Star Trek. That part just really bothered me
and
with
it's
it
a
was bad and it was not Star Trek.
and it's a real betrayal of Spock as a character. And I hate to be
Totally.
like, all Mr. Cannon guy, but in that random spin of Star Trek episodes, I recently watched This Side of Paradise, the one with the spores on
Yeah.
from the original series, and that has that whole love story with Jill Ireland, by the way, who was married to Charles Bronson for decades, which is just an interesting tidbit. But and that whole love story with Layla, which has always been an episode that's been in the back of my head with Spock, is and he said, well, when those spores hit me, that's the first time I ever got to feel like what that was. And the whole thing with Layla was is like, oh, I liked Spock, but he couldn't like me back. And it's like, well, she must have hit him at the wrong time because,
Yeah.
the rest of the time he's like super horn dog, right? And I just it really felt like a betrayal, and I don't need everything to be super 100%
Yeah, like
canon,
they
but
don't have to make him into a monk. I expected them to fully sexualize the power of how attractive we all found Nimoy, okay?
yeah,
Nimoy was like, obviously they expected Kirk to be the big, and he was in the 60s, but there was a huge contingent of women, okay, who recognized that Spock was the hottie. And it's because of the restraint he had, is because of that sense that Nimoy had, where he had, you could just sense that he has all this simmering stuff inside of him that he's keeping totally locked down. And they wanted to have Ethan Peck's character be, and again, this is not about the acting. Ethan Peck is a wonderful actor, which is why this is driving me so crazy.
yeah, agreed.
It's the writing.
It's the writing.
He's doing things and saying things constantly that Spock just would not do or say unless there was some serious something wrong with him.
And you 100% know who was the human being who walked in the offices at Star Trek in the late 60s and said, you guys, Leonard Nimoy is the sex symbol. And that was 200% Dorothy Fontana, who walked in there and said, because This Side of Paradise was originally a love story for Sulu. And she was the one that said, no, 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 no. And they're like, you can't do Spock as a sex symbol. And she was like, watch me, hold my
I'm still
beer.
angry that Shatner insisted that he'd be the one that kissed Uhura, because that's not what we wanted to see. Okay,
Yeah.
that moment has been stolen from us for all time.
Right. And well, totally, absolutely. And so okay, let's get into the episodes. So
And this is where it gets annoying because the first episode was good.
Started off strong.
And
yeah,
it had been so long since the last season that I'd completely forgotten that it ended on a cliffhanger, and I was so stoked to come back to it and be like, "Oh shit, I remember all that now."
yeah,
And then the first episode was good.
yeah. The first episode was good. We got our Gordon action. We had the amazing stuff with Ortega's like almost getting killed and having to still pilot the ship, which was a good moment for Ortega's, who's been underserved to this point. And then and the whole finding a solution and like coming up with a Star Trek way of like putting them basically to sleep or putting them into the hibernation cycle. It's good stuff. And that was a great start. Putting Battelle in the situation where like you know she's a ticking time bomb is interesting. No, probably the hardest negative because you just can't help it was Uhura's wig. Her like trying to like hide her hair after all those years was like super hard. I felt
Yeah,
terrible for that because it looked real bad.
yeah,
Um,
weird. That
but
was the first thing I noticed when I watched
yeah,
it.
can't blame her. Can't blame her. That's she had a couple years of time. She had a right to grow out her hair, so we'll live with that. Um, but it was funny because I think a couple of the actors, I mean, they, well, like she wasn't the biggest wig problem. That was in the shuttle episode with Una. I don't know what was going on with her hair that episode. Like, which was
I
weird.
don't
Did you guys notice that?
know.
But okay, I was the
Oh, there were memes about that where they were like photoshopping her with a literal helmet on in
yeah.
Star Trek shit posting, and like, oh, this is her hair this week, and it was just a helmet.
Well, because her hair was fine the week before and after. So it was like, did they come back and film all of her scenes for that episode after she cut her hair? It didn't make any sense.
I
She had
mean,
the most
the show is a painful haircut show for sure,
okay.
and it's the future.
There are some bad wigs. You
Okay.
could have a whole listicle, if I want to bring back a word from 2010, of like the 10 baddest wigs
Yeah,
on Strange New Worlds.
Yeah. I don't know if I have too much to say about the first episode, and other than the fact that because it was so fine, I didn't really have much to say. I thought it actually balanced the action and the tension,
Yeah.
and it was
It was a
great.
very strong start. I actually felt myself thinking later, because it was such a strong start. I thought, honestly, ironically, people wanted a happier Trek, but Strange New Worlds, its particular formula, its writing style does seem to work better when they just make it an action and drama stuff, because when they do comedy, and I am one who, like, it's fine if they want to sing and dance one episode and make it weird, go ahead, make it weird, but like do it well, and so I feel like they're more comfortable with the action
yeah,
episodes.
yeah. Those episodes are definitely working better. But yeah, the first episode was good. I was like, why has everyone trash talked season 3? This is great so far. I'm gonna watch the second episode now.
Right now. Well, and they did release 1 and 2 together, so we got, and I think they did that because they wanted to show everybody how lower decks they could be, I guess. Um, because they did release the second comedy episode right away, so we did get both, and I know they were very excited. I guess we might as well start episode 2. Um, they were excited to bring Trelane in, and that was definitely a nod to the original series fandom. And of course, everyone was worried about like when they saw that when there was hints that they were going to have Trelane in this season, and was like, well, how's that going to make sense with canon that they didn't, Spock didn't know him, and they found their way around that, and that was fine. Um, that they didn't see him, but this episode um went too far in the comedy, went too far into
Wait,
the.
David, you have to remind me which episode is which. I don't remember which the second.
Okay, this was Wedding Bell Blues. This is the one.
Oh, the wedding bell one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a waste of Rhys Darby, who is wonderful, and his parts were great. He was
Yeah.
great. Everything else that sucked.
Yeah, he was great as Trelane, and they made canon something that happened in the 90s Star Trek novels, which was making Trelane a Q, and which makes sense. So they actually did the scene from Q Squared, which is a Peter David's Star Trek novel from the 90s, and which was good timing because Peter David just recently passed away. It didn't do him any good. With his, he died with a bunch of massive medical bills, and so it's funny because there was right when that episode aired, and they were like, "Hey, so they made canon something that Peter David made up in the novels. Can we all donate to his family's like GoFundmes?" I donated $20. I know that. Like, just that was a good thing that came out of that episode. But yeah, they did waste Rhys Darby's. He was very good as Trelane, but the whole storyline with Spock and wanting to in this alternate universe to be married to Chapel was a betrayal of the character, in my opinion. Didn't make sense with the character. It was a bad storyline. It just made me ugh through the whole thing.
It was terrible.
Even though like the actors are doing a fine job doing the
Yeah.
comedy, doing all that, I laughed a couple times, but I was, it's the second episode, and I'm just like, oh God, is this what we're doing? And then I thought, well, if they do one, but I knew, excuse me, from the preview that we were going to get the silly Vulcan episode too, so that made me very worried.
I mean, it's
But
because the whole relationship, the whole episode is hinged on this idea that they keep trying to refer to with Chapel's love for Spock and TOS.
yeah,
And they can't decide what they want to do with this. Do they want them to have this, bond that keeps reoccurring despite everything else that goes on, much like Troy and Riker? Like, do they want to pay homage to what it was in TOS, where she's the one who loved him and, was always unrequited? And I really honestly expected them to do this very cool slow burn thing with them where they have a lot of chemistry. Every now and then they get to express it, and then Spock shuts it down because he's Vulcan, because
yeah,
that's what's supposed to happen, and that's what makes it work. That sense that he is sort of restraining himself is one of the things that made Nimoy so attractive, and that's what I expected them to do, and I expected it to be a little bit sexier and everything because it's 2025. But the way that they have done it is such a sad way of telling romance. It's such a waste of actors that have beautiful chemistry. It's
yeah,
they never put them together for longer than a half second. There was this, I remember when I was watching TNG, I was thinking about this, where it's not just how many episodes we have, where we have like 20, 30 episodes a season. It was that they never told us how long it was between episodes. They very rarely felt like they had to give any sense of expository transition where they say, well, 3 months ago this happened and now we're back. And so in your head as a child, when I was watching TNG, I thought, oh, well, they must have had a month, 2 months maybe of total chill, not much happening between episodes. And now they're like, bam, 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 bam. And they're going through the emotions of middle schoolers who just discovered puberty at this lightning speed. You get whiplash as an audience member because what you want is genuine connections with these characters. You want the characters to have genuine connections with each other, and they're not. They're acting like middle schoolers experiencing, you know, puberty.
Right.
Yeah,
And
totally.
and I think also the thing with Roger Corby is that if they had to make sense of the fact that in canon, Chapel said, had this guy, Roger Corby, that she had been engaged to. And what just doesn't make sense is, and I haven't gone back and watched the episode, which, by the way, was written by Robert Bloch, the author of Psycho, by the way. And I haven't rewatched the episode in a while, but I've seen it enough over the years that I don't need to. But that part of the whole theory is that Roger Corby has this kind of like brutal end to his story. So kind of making it this kind of goofy comedy thing is an interesting thing. They did a better job in the Through the Lens of Time episode later with Corby, like setting up what he actually did in the original series. And but in this episode, it's like I mean, they kind of showed why Christine would have feelings for him, and they showed that, but they didn't really show that kind of dark side coming. But for whatever reason, like it just like to me, this episode did nothing but harm in the canon, and it didn't do anything good story wise. It didn't tell a good story. It didn't like add depth to the canon. We've talked many times about how prequels can either like add to the canon and make the future stuff feel better, or they can just make it feel stupid. And this one did not help at all. Didn't help.
It was terrible. I mean, it like straight up terrible. Like that episode could have been cut out of the season, and the season would have been better for it.
Yeah. And
Like it didn't add anything.
I understand that George Michael's would be classical music hundreds of years on, but that whole scene was just pretty cringe. I you know,
But wait,
I
one thing
don't need for every ship to be like the Enterprise where people only listen to classical music, right? And
right.
like, I don't need that. Like,
I was gonna ask you guys because I figured if anyone knew, you two would know. Was that the Next Generation Q's voice of the father?
Yeah.
When
yeah,
it was right?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay. I
for
thought I
sure.
recognized his voice.
yeah, it was John
That was,
LaChancy, and
that
that's
was
the thing
awesome.
in Q Squared, the in the '90s, the Next Generation novel. There's a whole thing where you basically find out that because the end of the episode with Trelane in the original series is like whatever godlike beings they intended it to be come and say, "Quit playing with your toys, Trelane."
Right.
And basically, like what Peter David surmised in the '90s was, oh well, that was a Q. He was a Q.
Right.
And
I read the book, but I read it back in the 90s, so I don't remember it.
yeah, and so what they did was just basically make that canon, and that I guess that's the one good thing this episode did. I think that's, but again, it's not worth it. It's not worth it for everything bad that we got in that episode, and the fact that it happened after Peter, months after Peter David died is kind of weird timing. But um, all right, so episode 3 is Shuttle to Confori. This is one that I rewatched yesterday. So I have it a little fresher in my mind. This is obviously the zombie episode.
Oh,
And the, there's a couple cool things. They named the planet Fori, which after the actor from Dawn of the Dead, which is kind of cool. Um, we did zombies. We did Vulcan zombies in Enterprise in season 3. So we've already done this, but we didn't do Klingon zombies. So, right. So there were some things that I did like about this episode. I thought the whole setup with the having to go to the planet and the mission, and I thought Mbenga and Pike were actually pretty good dynamic. Um, some of the Klingon stuff I liked. The zombie stuff was a little over the top. I didn't love that. But at least I enjoyed some of the elements around it. I liked the kind of problem solving of the crew, and I loved Ortega's not following the rules, bending and cheating a little bit in order to make sure they go on the mission. And number one, confronting Ortega's was great Star Trek.
That
That was good stuff. That made up for all the kind of zombie stuff. There was
See,
some fun.
I didn't mind the zombies as much as I minded the Klingon stuff. I thought the Klingon stuff was a little bit ridiculous. As Klingon can tend to be, like whenever they get into like the crazy Klingon honor stuff with weird rules that doesn't really make sense. I didn't love that she was there to kill him or what, whatever, and the captain finds out about Mabenga killing that other Klingon, and it was fine, but it was a little ridiculous that they did a zombie episode too.
Yeah, there's some fun stuff online with the actor who played the Klingon woman. There was some fun videos. I don't know I'm sure Issa didn't see it. Sarah might have seen it, but she did these videos about how, because she had never seen Star Trek before when she got the job, and so she did this whole video about her crash course and learning about Klingons, where she like binged every Klingon episode she could and
That's pretty funny.
That's
started
cute.
learning the language, and like she did all these videos of her like working with one of her friends to learn Klingon, and she learned way more Klingon than she actually needed for the
That
episode.
makes me mad that they killed her off. Is
Yeah.
That's the other thing that this show does. You have to, I mean, I'm sorry, but from a critical perspective, they like to kill off minorities, and they did it with Ensign Gamble. They brought in this lovely character that was instantly likable and like, oh God. And,
Yeah, you knew he was going to die right away.
Well,
it's
they
just,
particularly we'll get to that episode in a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll get back to Gamble. But and but as far as like the Shuttle to Conforti episode, I think this is not a perfect episode, but it had some really good moments, and I really did love the number one Ortega's confrontation. But this was the episode where number one had the weird wig that was like completely distracting, and
it's
I
funny
can't.
if you were going to make a bad, like, break the rules, tell Pike. Do not tell number one, because Mbanga did this whole confession to Pike, and he's like, whatever. And then Uhura is like basically gives him false data, which should be a huge thing. And
Yeah,
the captain's like, you did it for a good reason. But if you do it to number one,
Yeah.
yeah, she's not gonna have it. Yeah, and that's actually a good balance between the first officer and the commander, actually, I think, and it's one of the better things about their dynamic. And but it's also consistent with how the character number one was written in the fucking first pilot.
Yeah.
So I can live with that, and I can go with it. So yeah, that one wasn't so bad. And then the next week we had Space Adventure Hour.
Wait, was that the holodeck episode?
This one, I was extremely tired when this is the only episode, by the way. So how I watch the new episodes of Star Trek, I call it for Trek Thursdays. I wake up early. I watch the episode before I go to work, have breakfast. This is the only Strange New Worlds that I did not watch in the morning, because I was just like, I'm not starting off my day this way, because I knew it was going to be terrible. I watched it after work. I fell asleep and then really debated whether I needed to rewind it and actually watch it. And I did, but God damn it.
This is the holodeck one, right?
This is the holodeck one.
Yeah, so Kirk was great. Like, it was so I love the Vampire Diaries, and so seeing Stefan Salvatore's Kirk has always been very fun. And him being able to like do an actual Kirk impression on the set was hilarious. I really enjoyed that. That was great. Everything else about the episode was so horrible that I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
Well, I was so confused that, like, if they are winking at the audience this hard, why not just use the actual TOS song? They own the IP, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
It's like they were trying to do a parody of themselves by pretending that they were another company that didn't own all this IP that they had to. I'm like, why are you doing that? You have all this shit. You could literally go back and access some of the original fucking costumes if you wanted to and use them. And I'm just like, you have all this that you have access to that, Spaceballs or what's the Star Trek parody that I'm forgetting? You
Galaxy
know,
Quest.
Galaxy Quest.
Galaxy Quest that
Yeah.
they could not go and do. And this is what, and I was just like, why? Why? As a branding person, I was so confused. I'm like, I don't understand. Why
But
are they doing?
they only did a couple minutes of the old show. And so, whatever. I didn't.
Well, that's why. Like, if you only have a couple minutes of it, make those minutes amazing. You have access to all of this. You can do whatever you want, and this is what they
Right.
go with. Ah,
Yeah, it was brutal. And here's the thing: as a person, and you guys know because you did the Science Fiction Hall of Fame episode with me. I'm a nerd for all the backstory for all this stuff, and I love. Here's the thing: if they had hired somebody, and I'm not saying it's because that person could be me, but if they had hired somebody like David Gerald, right? It doesn't have to be me, it could be David Gerald. He wrote Trouble with
Either
Tribble.
you or David Gerald, just so we're
Yeah.
clear. Yeah.
Somebody who was actually there and alive during those times and could actually because it's one thing to kind of make fun of Gene Roddenberry for it, but if you really want to go for it and you want to use actual material from those times, there's actually hilarious stuff.
That was another thing I was hoping to get answered today. How much of that was real? I mean, there was some of it that was like, a woman first officer, that was funny. There
Yeah.
was some stuff that was real, and I didn't know how much of it was actually real.
I mean, I didn't watch the episode. I was so horrified by the episode that
Okay.
if I went back and watched it a little closer, I think some of it would be there. But I remember thinking when I watched it, it was not close enough or it was too stupid in certain ways. And then um and
I
then
was
the
just
whole
bored through the whole episode. I was so painfully bored.
yeah, it just didn't work in the sense that I got what they were trying to go for, but I felt like it just didn't work. But here's the thing. So the whole breaking the whole it was too early for a holodeck thing. They had the excuse that they
Yeah.
did the holodeck on the animated series, basically. And so the fact that they actually paid off dialogue from the animated series is actually the coolest thing about the episode. That's it. But and that they gave an excuse for why it wouldn't work on the Enterprise
There's a
and
Yeah.
difference between also homage and feeling like, are they just ripping off TNG stories? Because I knew exactly what was going to happen. I was like, oh, they're going to TNG this episode. And
Totally.
they had the same exact plot in the TNG episode where they have the holodeck, where they have a program that can outwit, you know,
Data instead of
data.
Holmes.
yeah.
And the thing is, the actual sub content has to still be relatively well written. And I feel like the actors were just fucking around that day and they filmed it. Like
So if you wanted to
very
do
improv quality to it. I'm like, oh,
I actually think if you wanted to do the fake Star Trek episode and the make fun of this 60s ness of it all, that would have been a better Trelane episode.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. They could have
And
had the whole episode be set back then, and then they could go to Ticonderoga and use the TOS set or something, because that would have made so much more sense.
yeah. And they could have just had that be and then the cues show up and tell Trelane quit playing with your toys, and then blank, none of them remember it, right?
Yeah,
And they
and
could
they're
have done
back
that.
in their own era. That would have been great.
It would have been,
Yeah.
and then you
So
would
one thing that was a
solve
thing
two bad episodes. Got two
turned into
carrots
one
with one
episode,
knife.
yeah. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but the plot that should have been the main theme of the whole thing, and it was sort of in the first episode and in the last episode, around Patel. they wasted so much time that could have been turning that 5 minutes of exposition reveal into like actual story that made everything worse. Like in
Yeah.
Yeah,
anyway,
that was
sorry.
so unnecessary. I'm like,
Yeah.
why do we need that? We don't need that at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and the Battelle thing, like they just really wanted her on the ship all season long, which I get it. She's a good actor. Like I
Yeah.
actually like the character, but it just doesn't make sense for two captains to be like hanging out on a ship. And then the other thing is you have like this very well-trained captain and you're going through all these crises and you're just not like, hey, I'll be back later. See you in my quarters after I deal with this horrendous thing. Like, wouldn't you want this other captain who now has Gorn DNA? Like,
Yeah, you get that they're trying for equality, right? They're trying to send a message that Pike should be with somebody who is his equal. And I
yeah,
appreciate that as a feminist. I get that. He shouldn't be with somebody who is, 30 years younger than him and do the Captain Kirk thing or whatever. But, and I appreciate the fact that their romance is actually believable, unlike Spock and
Yeah.
Chapel's, because it has to be because it's more mature and they're both older. But it also, I think they do a better job with Pike's character development because he's a man. But anyway, like it, they didn't have to have her then, it subverts that whole message of, hey, they're equals if she's just at home baking cookies while he's handling this very real threat. You forget she's there and you're like, "Oh wait, she's there, but she's not." That's
yeah.
weird.
And the argument would be that she almost died and that she's not physically herself,
Right.
whatever. But she's a
Yeah.
fucking captain and she knows what she's doing. And
You know what would
you
have been amazing is if they showed a scene with her in sick bay watching what was going on like a screen or something on the bridge and sort of muttering to herself what like why aren't you doing this?
Right.
well, and why not
Or telling them to
have
sleep
her when
next to
he's off on the shuttle on the other planet? Why not have her walk on the bridge and number one look at her and be like, and not even like have them exchange words, but Patel just go and sit in that chair and take command,
Yeah.
right? Just do it,
Yeah.
Now, granted, I like seeing number one in command too. So, but Patel outranks her, period.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, that's kind of a okay, whatever.
I think there's a long maritime, since I'm on a boat right now, I will say there's a long maritime history of captains who are not in the formal chain of command on a ship. I believe they get the title of Commodore and they just don't, they're not in the formal chain of command. I don't actually know. I've just seen some movies. So,
I mean, TOS did this once though, right? When remember they had the
Decker
Commodore.
took command, yeah, in
Yeah.
the Doomsday Machine, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm not a total nerd who just answered that so quickly, but whatever.
I
I
can
just
never
happened to
remember the
watch
episode
that
title.
episode.
you wouldn't
I
want
appreciate the
anyone
fact that I can just say, "Hey, you remember that episode?" and you always know what I'm talking about.
you wouldn't want anyone watching your Star Trek podcast to think you were a nerd. So I understand.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Spinrad wrote that episode. That's my excuse. Like, but and by the way, I actually have the behind the scenes notes on that episode where they actually talk about whether Spock would art because originally I think he had Spock like not wanting to give command to Decker, and they gave the notes like, nope, Spock would like let him have that chair right away.
Right.
He's like, you know. So, anyways, through the lens of time is the next episode. I think we're done with the holodeck episode, right? We
Oh
don't
yeah.
have too much to say about. I mean,
You've
it's
seen it
bad.
before. Yeah, it was nothing you hadn't seen before.
No, you could take that episode out.
Yeah.
Nobody would care. All right, through the lens of time is the episode where they get all Indiana Jonesy with Roger Corby, and so and the whole gamble thing. Like, I mean, the laziness of Gamble, like basically as soon as that whole like intro was about him, we immediately knew he's dead,
Yep.
right? Because we're like, we've never given
Everything
any
on this whole
attention to this
season
guy.
was so telegraphed like that. Like there was not a single surprise.
It's like, oh shit, we got to make you care about this guy,
Yeah.
right? As if like we wouldn't care about a guy who we'd seen a couple times, throughout things. But that was really lazy writing. Like, oh, it's your first away mission, and we're gonna put all this
Yeah,
attention to it. Oh my god, you are so dead. You might as well put on a red
totally.
shirt. Um,
Seriously.
and so that I here's some things I liked about this episode. First of all, it it deepens the Roger Corby thing. For those who don't remember the Roger Corby episode, is that one of the things is that episode was written by Robert Bloch, who is an acolyte of H.P. Lovecraft. And so there's basically this weird Lovecraftian thing going on in that original episode, the original series episode, where Corby was like all about like the old ones and using this ancient technology to turn people into robots. And so actually deepening that was pretty cool. And I'll actually go that was neat. And most people wouldn't realize that episode was written by a Lovecraftian, a guy who traded letters with Lovecraft in the 30s. So that whole tradition in that episode actually felt really good to me. And I was like, I know the people who wrote this episode didn't know that, but they went back and watched. They probably went back and watched the Roger Corby episode. We're like, okay, this is what we got to play with. And I loved some of the things about the ancient technology. I love the guy who was supposed to be the expert from this culture who immediately gets zapped. That was funny. I there were things I liked about this episode. The things I did not like about this episode was the whole walking down the hallway and being like, so I know you've been hanging out with Spock. And like all that stuff was useless and stupid and like did not add tension to the episode. We're the audience could have remembered that or thought about that on their own. We don't need you to tell us again. We didn't need that scene.
We'll get this
Like,
another example of they're doing exposition. If
Yeah.
they want to show that she notices that Spock and Lahan are together, have her do that. Fucking show don't tell. It's like the number
yeah.
one rule of fucking fiction, and they breaking it.
Yeah. Spock hands her a coffee without her asking. Chapel turns and looks and sees.
Right. That's very intimate.
We don't need to see that. And by the way, that coffee handoff episode happened in What is Starfleet. It did not happen in this one, but you could have done that and then not.
Also, if you're going to fucking put Spock and Lahan together right after it, maybe it shouldn't be the very next episode, first of all, okay? Because again, whiplash. But also, fucking lead up to it. Put a few
Totally.
minutes from each of that story in each thing so that maybe by the end, Spock and Lahan are together or getting together, whatever. But like, honestly, the whole thing is so middle school. It's so
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah.
It was like they had, and I will say that the tension between Spock and Lon, although the dance thing was kind of stupid without the wedding involved, the tension between them was actually pretty good. Like I
Yeah,
liked
that's why what
did
makes
it
it
really
so much
well.
worse. They
Yeah, they
keep
could have drawn it
wasting
out. Yeah, if
these
they
good
had to do it, they
actors.
could have drawn it out at least.
Yeah. And if you had the tension be all like unrequited, I would have been really down for that. But I didn't really buy the Lon Spock thing. I remember watching it on that Thursday morning and being like, what?
Right.
Totally.
Especially after they gave us the Lon Kirk thing
Yeah.
last season, which obviously just disappeared from existence other than referencing it exactly once.
Yeah, I saw a shit posting meme where somebody was like, had a picture of Lon, Spock, and Kirk, and it was like, oh, I see where this is going. But of course, and we'll get to the thing that I think they're later that I think they're setting up with Lahan, because the whole thing with Lahan that's like so stupid, and I think they've got a solution for it. I think they're setting up a solution for it, but the idea that Khan Noonien Singh comes on, gets unfrozen, and Spock isn't like, oh, hey, I used to date your descendant, right? Or
Totally.
like, I would even remember the name. And I think they have a solution for that. I think they're setting something up. But it has been my problem with La'an from the beginning is that the stupidity of having a character named Noonien Singh as the security officer of the Enterprise when Spock's hanging around just doesn't make sense. Now, like I said, I think they're setting up a solution because La'an's on her way to get erased, and I think we're spending a lot of time with this character, and that could, and you say like, oh well, that's, well, wouldn't that be horrible to erase her? But I actually think whatever affection that we have for La'an as a character, it's gonna make it more tragic when she gets erased from history, and she's gonna get erased from history, and they're setting that up, and that's the only thing that makes sense. And if they don't do it, I'll be as mad as when the kid was still alive at the end of Spielberg's War of the Worlds, which was the dumbest thing in the history of movies. That kid
I
should
hope
be
they
dead.
don't do it because they already, had to remove Michael Burnham from existence, so Spock never mentions
No,
his.
no, that's different. That is she is classified.
Well,
And
oh, so
You think
you're
it's going to be
saying
a
literal
timeline?
erasement from history, like she never
I
lived?
literally think she's going to be erased by the Metrons and all the knowledge of the Gorn and all of it. And she's going to sacrifice herself to erase the Gorn. I think she is
It-
going to make a decision to pull
It's
herself out of history
it's
and
fine,
with the Gorn.
but when this show is over, I'm going to go through and I'm going to document how many times minorities were killed, erased, tortured, and meanwhile, Spock and Pike and all of the white men just get to have wonderful character development. And it just, not that Spock has wonderful character development because he does not, but Pike does. And but the thing that bad things happen to the minorities is happening a lot on Strange New Worlds, and it's really making me very uncomfortable.
I mean,
Well,
I'm stoked that they brought in all these minority actors. That's great. Like
No, but
they can't
that's
they
the thing.
can't
That's the
do
script that
things.
they are fulfilling because the people who did not like Discovery, the central thing that bothered them is that the minorities were in power.
Well, of
In
course,
Strange
right?
New Worlds, they are subordinates where they should be, right? And
yeah.
and they're not only are they the subordinates on the crew, but they are also the aliens that get killed. They
Well,
are the guy the expert of the planet that gets zapped, Ensign Gamble, and it's
Sure.
just
But some
the
of it is
Wonderful Klingon woman.
you got to work with the show though. We need Pike to, we know when Pike dies. We know Spock doesn't die. We know Kirk doesn't die. So you're
you're
sort of
kind of, yeah, but
within
that,
But that's
the
my
conflict.
point.
Yeah.
well,
I'm
I
just
know her,
saying.
and Uhura can carry a lot of that weight by deepening her character. You can do that. I'm not.
They
I,
need to work on the women characters because most of the women characters on this show are blank slates that you write plots upon, right?
yeah.
You could not tell me who Chapel is at this point. You couldn't tell me. She's a romantic love interest that goes back and forth between various people. She's beautiful. She is curious about science. That's it. That's all we got. She doesn't have almost any character development for the
Well,
amount of
that
screen.
actually makes sense with her character as it was displayed in the original series, and I'm not saying that's good, but when I do,
Well, that of course, but that's what they want. They want
yeah,
these characters to be blank slates that you write your romantic story upon instead of characters of their own right.
I think Uhura has been very well deepened, and I
Yeah,
that's the
for
only
sure.
one I will say they've done a good job of the
Yes.
women characters. They've done a good
Well,
job with Uhura.
there hasn't been a lot of time to do, like they haven't spent time developing the other characters very
No, but that's
much.
the thing because they keep using up the time with these bullshit scenes that we shouldn't
Yeah,
have.
totally. Totally. Well,
Yeah.
we know Lon's backstory with the Gorn. that, they've done a reasonably good job with that.
We
And
know with Uhura that she had the shuttle accident. We've seen her like do the train. I thought the training that she did in engineering, like that was,
I think Uhura is a little different just because she's from TOS,
yeah,
so it's really the problem that Sarah's talking about is with the temporary characters or whatever you want to call them.
yeah,
Like I like them. The actors are all great. We just need to learn more about the characters.
Well, and if every time somebody needs to go up to those writers and say, look, every time you're tempted to have two characters talk in a hallway and a turbo lift about what happened, write the scene instead, show it, because it'll probably take the same amount of time.
yeah,
Often it will. Like the lengthy conversations that they are having, the therapy style conversations where everybody is enlightened and everybody is emotionally intelligent in the exact same flat way. You like this group of characters feels like they were all written by the same people, which isn't what writing is supposed to
Yeah.
feel like.
Right. You're not supposed to be able to change the names of the characters around in the script and have it come out the exact same.
yeah.
You could do that. You could swap
And
so many of these storylines. You could swap, Chapel's role with Lahan or Lahan's character with and have that thing happen to her instead and keep all of the lines the same and you would never know the difference.
Yeah.
well,
Totally.
and one of the things that as an exercise in the Star Trek writing rooms they should start doing is looking at every scene and being like, how's a what ways can we do this scene without having somebody explain it? Like, just what ways can we visualize this? And they need to start. They need very badly to start doing that because I think about um okay, and again, this is I randomly spun up the other day Next Generation and happened to watch the finale, the All Good Things, and the amount of work that Gates McFadden does in the last scene of Next Generation, the very last scene, when Picard sits down at the table and says, we should have done this a long time ago. And Gates McFadden gives this look to the rest of the crew. It says so much. You didn't need anybody who's like, and then she says, you were always welcome. How many times did they talk about wanting to have the captain there? And we know that nobody had to tell us that. Nobody had to tell us that. Gates McFadden looked at everyone else and then looked at Picard. She looks at him, looks back at him, and the look on her face says everything. It says everything for it. And there's not Strange New Worlds. They don't do it. That they don't do any of that stuff enough.
It's so
And
funny that there's this fine line between you want your characters to talk about their feelings more because they didn't do that enough in TNG, right? In TNG, traumatic things would happen to characters. They would never talk about it again for the
yeah,
most part, other than some very specific examples. And that is one of the reasons why there's this assumption that there's a long time between each adventure.
yeah,
But they do it so much in this show that it actually feels less mature because I'm like, oh my God, these people, can they just please stop talking about their feelings for like 5 seconds?
yeah.
I never felt that out of Discovery. That was something that they complained about
No,
all the
that
time.
was my main
Discovery.
complaint
I
about
didn't feel
Discovery
about
was
that,
I,
but I
I
do
felt like
feel it about
Discovery
this show.
Sarah, I felt like Discovery did that a lot, and that was my main complaint about Discovery was that it was constantly people talking about feelings.
I
Yeah,
think
but
that
people
it's
have gotten
better
way
done
overboard about it.
because the character development was better and because there wasn't all this exposition. So when they talked to each other, it felt more real. Whereas when they do it now, they're referencing stuff that happened off screen. When
Yeah,
Chapel and Spock talk about their relationship, they're referencing stuff that happened off screen. And so
right.
you don't buy it. It isn't the same way where when Michael Burnham and Book are talking, they're referencing stuff that we saw happen, and that's the difference.
No,
Yeah.
for sure.
All right. So episode 6, the shallot who ate his tail that ate its tail. This is the Kirk takes command with the giant world destroyer episode.
Oh, right. That looked like a
Um,
beetle for some unknown reason.
The
Yeah.
Borg episode.
The what episode? The Borg?
They recreated the Borg without having to recreate the Borg, basically.
Yeah.
In
Listen,
so one
I
of the,
rewatched a few minutes of this episode this morning, but I didn't watch the whole thing just to refresh my memory. And for me, this was a great episode that got ruined by the last 5 minutes. And there's a couple. I really enjoyed this episode. This also has Pelia's quarters for the first time in it, which was hilarious. See, that's
Right.
comedy done well.
Yeah.
Yes.
The when they're all like using her phones, that's actually pretty good comedy. And I thought all the Kirk Spock stuff was incredible. If you're somebody who's been watching Star Trek for 50 years, this is actually stuff that deepens the characters, and having Spock come in there and tell him, you can do this, you got this, buddy. It explains basically, and he doesn't know him then, but it adds a reason for why Kirk would be like, he's my boy, this is my guy, I've got to have you as my first
I like
officer when it
that.
comes.
I did like that. I
Yeah.
didn't like the rest of a lot of the Kirk stuff in this episode though, because it's just where is his, they neutered Kirk of his number one defining trait, which to be fair is probably an accident of Shatner not being a very good actor, but they neutered Kirk of his cockiness. And I'm not talking about like when Kirk has a crisis of faith in like Star Trek 3, right? Where he's like in his birthday, he's having his birthday and he's like down because he's like starting to actually feel mortal, and he starts to actually, because his friend died, right? That's like this progression. So you want to tell me that this Kirk is feeling all of these insecurities, then at some point becomes cocky, and then starts to shed his cockiness as he gets older.
I will
Because
disagree a
I
little
feel
bit
like
because I just watched it this morning. He starts off
I watched
that.
it this morning too.
Okay, I'm
no,
just
hold on.
saying
I didn't watch it this morning, but he starts off cocky in the
he
episode.
starts off cocky. Yeah.
He's like, we should do this. And then the fact that he suggests they go down on the planet right before the planet blows up and he realizes he would have just killed everybody is what throws him off. And that was
Yeah.
well done, I thought.
Yeah.
I didn't buy it, but I also I just feel like this Kirk is deeper and wiser than he has any right to be this early on.
Well,
I really like him. I like the actor. I like the way he plays Kirk. It's a really hard role to play, and I feel like it's done very well. It's one of my favorite things about the show.
yeah, I actually, yeah, this to me, the first, all the Kirk Spock stuff in this episode is, I think, some of the best stuff of the season. And I think, I don't know, I liked it.
I think he's great with Spock. I do. I really think that because they knew that that was important. They knew that the relationship with them is important. They even teased out some of the Spurk stuff,
Yeah.
which really pleased me very, very much. But I just feel like it goes along with the homogenization of these characters where, they are just kind of all the same generic person.
And I also like that for what it says about the crew that we're going to eventually get on the Enterprise. The fact that they're all standing on the bridge and they're looking to, and they're like, this guy's not ready.
Yeah.
And you know that these people will walk into hell for that guy 5 years later,
Right.
10 years later, 20 years later. And to see them have a moment where they didn't trust him, where they didn't believe in him,
Yeah.
that was good stuff. I like that. Where the episode lost me, and where again it's just, and the reveal of it was fine, but this whole like they were the best of us and that they were humans that had gone off and been lost, and that ending just didn't make a lot of sense to me. And it just kind of, I thought it didn't ruin the episode for me, but it took it from being like, if they had not even really like, if they hadn't even explained who these people were or who this ship was, if they just left it a complete mystery, I would have been happier. I would have been happier.
You know what? I have changed my mind based on what Sarah said, because we get Kirk as a cadet doing the Kobayashi Maru thing and stuff and being like already super duper even more cocky. And canonically they have knocked him back
Yeah.
from what his character was already when he was supposed to be younger. So that's a
Right.
Sarah,
And the fun of Kirk being this cocky is the contrast that he has with the other characters. If he is as emotionally aware of himself as as again therapy informed as the other characters, you don't have that contrast between characters.
Yeah. Well, and okay, I haven't been as convinced as Issa because I do think that there's ups and downs. As cocky as you can be, you have moments where you're like, I don't have it today, So I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I did not like that ending. That's all.
Also,
I'd rather
I want to add that Scotty is a great addition. Also, I really like him. Although
he
he's
was
too
great.
young, I
Why
feel
did
like
they
he's too
need a
young. I don't know
briefing
why he's so
room?
young, but why do what?
Why did they need a briefing room to situation to explain the backstory of these humans that turn into this race? Like,
The
I,
ending was just bad.
it was
like
very
they,
weird.
they
I
they
feel
were
like
like,
they were
oh, it was
trying
only
to,
200 years ago. I'm like, that would not have evolved in 200 years.
yeah.
That's no amount of time at all. None.
I think they were trying to drag controversy from the jaws of victory, you know what I mean? Like to give it a twist where Kirk feels bad for killing all these people, like command weighs,
Yeah,
the crown is heavy kind of thing.
yeah. But it
But
just
it
felt
wasn't, it
so
was very
silly that they
dismissive.
were like having to explain to them in a briefing room what happened 200 years ago to these people who are supposed to be very well educated. It would be like telling us, oh, there's this thing that happened called the American Civil War. You
Yeah.
might not have heard of it.
Well, and it
Right.
would have made more sense if they had somewhere to go with it. Like if the 7,000 people weren't killed and it was just like
Yeah.
we're reassimilating these people into modern human society or whatever, just something. It was a little bit random.
Yeah,
A lot
and
of death on this show for no reason. They're like, oh, it'll be dramatic if these people die instead. So we'll just do that.
Right.
yeah, and so my problem with this is that even when they do really this season, when they do good stuff like the shuttle episode with the zombies, it's like there's good things in there, but then it's
Yeah.
at the same time there's such bad stuff. And this episode has so many good moments, but it just the writing, like I mean, you're right, Sarah. Like, doesn't make sense how they did the exposition for it, and it just would have been better if they didn't know where this thing came from or what it was. If it was just this complete mystery of, well, that was a weird thing, you
Well, and
know?
there were hints. They didn't really lay the groundwork. Like there's that one scene where Pike, the guy doesn't shoot Pike. And
Yeah,
you're like, is that just plot armor? Like, why didn't Pike get shot? Something weird happened there. But then they didn't really. You got to build up to stuff. You can't. This season was just no build up to anything whatsoever.
yeah,
Then you have threads to pick up
Yeah,
later
totally,
that feel super exciting for the fan who's been waiting to find out what that was all about.
totally.
yeah. If yeah, you'd have stuff to work with there. All right, now we gotta talk about the documentary. What is
Oh
Starfleet?
God, this was like. Let me go first on this one, David, because I
Yeah.
was so mad about this. This was
Oh, you were mad. I
like
the week it
Star
came out.
Trek political show, social commentary. They start off and it's sort of like, okay, they're going to go into the American military and America the good guys in the world. Then it turns into this like Israel Palestine situation, and then they just wimp out completely, and it goes into nothing. And I was just like, you've got to be kidding me.
Okay, there was that. There was the fact that it was this terrible documentary. Um, and so if you wanted to do this concept, if you wanted to do a documentary in Star Trek, here's what I suggest. Here's what I would have done if I was a producer of the show. I would hire a real documentarian and I would have them film stuff throughout the whole season, and I would have done a bonus episode or a short track that was called What is Starfleet, and then have it follow all the same events as this story. But instead, doing the episode, like trying to tell a good Star Trek episode, because by the way, this episode, the story in it, would have been a good episode of Star Trek, would have been a good Star Trek story. But you ruined it. You
Yes.
ruined it by trying to do this fake documentary style, and it doesn't look like a documentary. It doesn't respond like a documentary. And for moments, it kind of does, but then it doesn't. And then it does all the worst shit. First of all, if you don't know, I hate found footage. I think found footage is the worst shit in the world. I fucking can't stand it. It's one of my pet peeves. I hate found footage with the passion of 10,000 burning warp cores.
Just to be
like,
contrary, I like found footage. I think it's fine. I liked Cloverfield, and I didn't like Blair Witch, but I thought the concept was cool.
I've
So,
liked a few of them, but
Fine, but it's stupid in Star Trek.
okay.
It's okay.
They
And
also stole it from The Expanse. They went total expanse in this episode, as if they would have. It isn't. It's believable that Star Trek that Starfleet would allow a documentarian, but it's not believable that Starfleet would allow the equivalent of a random YouTuber onto the bridge to watch these highly classified missions and film them and potentially get in the way of dangerous missions. It's not Starfleet for them to be doing that.
and on top of it, if you're going to, this is my problem with, and people get mad at me on this too, because in relation to my hatred for found footage is my dislike for first person narratives. Because 9 times out of 10, most writers break the rules. If you're going to write a first person narrative, you better have some skills like Stephen King to do Dolores Claiborne. Because one of the reasons why Dolores Claiborne works as a first person narrative is because Stephen King never broke character. He stayed Dolores Claiborne talking through the whole book. He had no problem like letting the novel not be, write about a pretty sunset, because Dolores Claiborne isn't going to be describing the sunset. So he stuck with it. Okay. So there's this horror author who has way more sales than me. He's been translated into a bunch of languages. His name is Nicholas Benji, and he writes everything in first person. And he wrote an epistolary novel called Ascension that was like being like Stephen King blurbed it, and which I have no understanding how that happened, because the novel is supposed to be written in letters, and no one writes letters like a novel. Okay, they don't. That's so if you're gonna write your novel, do not write it in letters. Okay, don't, unless you're gonna stick to it. Okay, and this episode cheats like nobody's business. No one is going to let a little floating camera hang in a little tiny corner in the back while Pike and number one have a top secret communique with Starfleet.
Yeah.
That's some bullshit.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do that, if you're going to do this episode, then you don't get that scene.
Yeah.
You just don't get that scene if you're going to do it this way.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. We've got a priority message. Let's leave the documentary guy.
There's found footage movies where somebody like, oh, I left my camera running and I put it down sideways at the right exact time for this person to have this conversation. No, fuck you. Fuck you. If you're going to do found footage, stick to it. And that pisses me off like nobody's business. Sarah, you are 100% right. This is not Starfleet. It's not believable. There's a good Star Trek story in there with that creature and that whole thing. And so all this did was piss me off that I saw bits and pieces of a good Star Trek story, because I love the Uhura stuff. I loved Uhura like trying to communicate with it. I love them risking the shuttle mission and Chapel and Spock almost getting off, like trying to communicate with. I liked that stuff. There's a good Star Trek story here.
Yeah, all of that was great, and just. But it's like you can't in 2025 with everything that's happening in the world. The story is they're bringing a weapon to one side of a conflict, and like they didn't have any social commentary on it. Like it ended up being just nothing. And the documentarian who was like, his motivation going in was questionable. Then it turned out he just missed his sister or whatever it was, right? Or his sister almost died. Like literally nothing.
His relationship with Uhura too is not believable.
Totally. So
they just randomly threw a guy at her. They didn't really try to like find somebody that she would have any actual chemistry with. He feels like a child compared to her. Like it just doesn't Doesn't
It's
work.
totally not believable. None of it
Well,
worked.
and I'll find that believable that like maybe she got involved with the guy and then is immediately like, you know what, dude, come on, that happens. But and I'll buy that. I think Uhura stuff in this episode is good. And that's about it. I think the execution of this episode is one of the worst atrocities in the history of Star Trek, and I'm not even kidding. I think this is worse than Spock's brain. This is worse than the empath from season 3 of the original series I would watch before this. The fucking alternate factor from original series with fucking Lazarus is better than this.
The documentary was pretty terrible.
There's some pretty. This is, to me, this is on par with the flashback episode from the strike of season 2 of TNG.
And this one, you're right. It's especially frustrating because there was the good Star Trek elements in there, and you could have kept all those and written a good episode around it, but they really didn't.
And part of the problem is we're going back to back buttholes of episodes because like the next one is fucking terrible too. So
let's take a quick break while we lost Sarah. She's back.
No, she's
I didn't
here.
know it was gonna
My
be
oven was beeping for no reason.
Huh, okay.
800-year-old
ghost.
So I mean, back to back, we have What is Starfleet and 4.5 Vulcans. I mean, this is a low point. And I honestly don't think, I think the highest point, if you look at all the episodes of this season, the highest point was episode 1.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And none of the episodes,
and it was really just a continuation of season 2. Like it barely, it didn't have to do anything on its own. It had all the setup.
I did enjoy. We're not there yet, I know, and we still have to talk about how terrible the multi Vulcan one was. But I did enjoy the Gorn Slumber Party Girls Night episode.
Okay, we'll get there.
Enemy Mine episode.
Yeah, that's Terrarium. That's number 9. So first we got to get into the racist Vulcan episode. So
why does their hair fucking change when they take a serum?
Sarah, that's what happens when you take a serum, okay? Everybody knows.
Like, and the thing is, what drives me crazy about this is how lazy this is. Their very next shot, after they have the scene where they all take the serum, is them, like pimp walking through the Enterprise very confidently in slow motion. That is when you reveal their hairstyles being all Vulcan, not when they take the fucking serum. We know that they have hair products in this universe because girlfriend Captain said to him, made that joke about all of his hair products. Okay, so we know that he has to actually do his hair. That does not come from a serum.
Right. So
if it can change your ears, it can change your hair. I think that's reasonable.
No. And look, there was a lot of commentary even before the episode came out, when just the clip came out. And I know Jesse Gender did a lot of really good stuff about how racist the idea that you could take the serum and turn them into Vulcans so they can fool this other species, okay, whatever. But then your complete behavior changes, your attitude changes, your personality changes. Like, that's not genetic. Your personality is not.
And it's the same serum or whatever, the same process of that other horrible episode from last season.
Which I hated at that episode.
Spock's whole identity being erased because he becomes fully human. But then for some reason, he also loses his memory about what it's like to be Vulcan, which is never explained. He just loses his memory. And then you want to tell me that the same process makes all these people perfectly Vulcan. Suddenly they understand being Vulcan perfectly. Like, oh my God, that's what I'm talking about. In universe, I don't care. I am so like a person who does not give a shit about canon. I give a shit about characters, being true to the characters, but I give a shit about in TV shows. So I want Strange New Worlds to be consistent with itself. That's all I ask for. I don't think that's too fast.
Well, if you want me to spend 50 years believing in Vulcan culture and Vulcan society, and that Vulcans are real and that Romulans are a thing, and so on and so forth, then you can't change the rules just because it's funny for one episode. You have to
And
do.
it wasn't even funny.
It
It
wasn't.
wasn't even funny. That was
It was
if it had
weird.
been funny,
Yeah.
I would have forgiven so much of this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
all the scenes that they have of Spock as a child in all of the different versions, including the Kelvin version, where they have him as a child learning how to be Vulcan.
yeah. Well, and how many times, as far back as the original series, has he explained Vulcans have emotions? We just learn to control them. Like, and the whole reason why Vulcan society is the way that it is, and you got to remember, in Star Trek canon, the Vulcans are way older than us. They have had 4 times the length of civilization that we did, and they almost destroyed themselves with their emotions long time ago with technology and with a society, which is an interesting thing to think about, but that's canon. That's what Spock said in the original series.
Right.
And, you know, and it's funny because in the random spin, I just saw an episode where Spock literally said, "Common misconception: we have emotions, we just control them."
Which is a
So
missed opportunity because they could have had the same setup, did something completely different with it. I mean, look at the Picard, the way that Picard suffers when he has to handle Sarek's Katra and
yeah,
handle his thoughts and his memories and keep him in control for him to do this one diplomatic mission. That's what they would be acting like. They would
yeah,
not be living out this nerd fantasy wish fulfillment thing of, oh my God, life is so much better now that I'm smarter.
yeah.
So
No, the
sad.
whole thing was
It
every.
was all terrible. Like
It
you
This
was
is
couldn't
all
why I
terrible.
wanted to drink through this.
This episode,
Elliot talking about LSD was hilarious. I really enjoyed that. That was like the
I love
highlight of
her.
the episode.
yeah,
She's great. Carol
But
Kane, man. They're so lucky to have her.
even like and then there's like the after credit scene. I didn't like I love Patton Oswalt. He's usually hilarious. This was not funny. Like it didn't work.
Very
Like
strange.
it
Very
was just
weird.
bad.
yeah, and things like they missed opportunities. For example, like even in that scene with Patton Oswald, like if he for Spock to like not get it and like instead of saying you're too slow, saying your acceleration was inefficient for or whatever, like he says it wrong.
Inadequate acceleration. Yeah.
That would have been funny, right? If he
Yeah,
says
that would have been
it's like
funnier. Yeah.
no, it's supposed to rhyme.
Right. Like the
Yeah, if
yeah.
he did that, for example, that's funny. That could be funny. It's a setup, but yeah. And Patton, oh, I forgot about the whole Patton Oswald thing because that whole thing with number one was just
Oh, that was so horrible.
so bad, and it was so bad to her character. It was such an insult to. I mean, not that she can't have a relationship with a Vulcan, not that she can't have a relationship with a nerdy guy or whatever. That's fine. It just didn't make like she wasn't behaving like number one. Number one is like cold, logical. That's her character. So you
That's
have
probably
her.
why they did it, because they wanted to be like, haha, isn't it funny that we took away who she is and in its entirety? Because she literally states, I become a different person around him. But
Yeah.
like you don't, again, you see her say that, and then you see her become a different person around him, but you don't give a why. You don't make him charming. You don't make him, and he's Patton Oswalt. He's a charming person. Figure it out.
Yeah. Well, and how much funnier would it have been? How much more comedic shit could you like gotten out of that orange that you're squeezing if they have that whole relationship between him and her where they're not using emotions or they're not acting like giddy school children, if they're like doing it
Yeah.
like so inhumanly, like that would be funny,
Yeah.
it could be
I
funny.
I feel like it was probably not good for the show to have, even though the Lower Decks crossover episode was great, but the
Yeah,
influence of the lower decks on the Strange New Worlds was not great because they keep trying to redo that. And I'm like, unless unless it's a lower decks episode, please stop because it doesn't, this whole like non-reality thing doesn't work.
No,
Yeah.
I
Have
feel like
an in-universe explanation for it.
the seeds of this have been there. It's like, this is what bothered me about this episode is like they looked through episode seasons 1 and 2 and said, we're going to keep this element and this element, which were like the worst elements. Like thinking back, I've blocked most of it out of my mind, but thinking back, we had like Spock's Vulcan wife coming with the chapel thing, and like some farce romance stuff going on. In previous episodes, we had the musical episode. People took those things and were like, let's base season 3 on these things. And that was just a huge mistake.
Again,
Huge.
it's the focus group, right? They're like, oh, what worked last season? We'll do more of that. Add more of
Yeah,
that.
I don't know what made them think that was what worked in the previous seasons.
Because I don't think there was a lot of talk about how much people loved that stuff because they didn't. Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah. Okay, so Gordon Slumber Party.
Enemy Mine.
Enemy Mine, yeah. And this one,
I mean, it was Enemy Mine. Like, it wasn't even like, it was Enemy Mine.
It was Enemy Mine. And here's the thing, like, it wasn't actually a bad episode. I kind of liked it. And coming off of the two atrocious, blatant desecration of sacred vows that were the last two episodes were so bad. This one, like, it couldn't be as bad as the last two. So could it? So here's my problem with this episode. My only problem with this episode is that it was lazy too, because it was really just Enemy Mine. It was just a remake of Enemy Mine. So
Yeah, I mean, I did not find it as egregious as the other thefts because they did a good job with it. And one of the things that I
I'll agree
appreciate
with that.
is that they were building up that that this character has why am I not remembering her name? I fly the ship.
Ortega's.
Thank you, Ortega's.
She flies the ship.
But like they were building up this thing where she was traumatized. She was acting out, right? She had this insubordination moment because she's traumatized by the Gorn. She has all these issues. And I was like very tedious about this. I was like, oh no, she's going to end up having her she's going to have to talk about her feelings, but they didn't. Instead, they didn't tell, right?
Yeah.
And that I was like, oh, finally, somebody fucking showed us something. She went
Yeah.
off on this planet. And, one of the things that I think is a problem with this show is they try to pack in too much. They try to do too much per episode. There'll be like multiple side plots and side things going on, like with the episode about the documentary. The story itself was fine. Why they felt like they had to add a bunch of random crap around it, like everybody watching has ADHD or something, is not that you don't have to do that. And here's this simple story that, feels like Star Trek because it's just her and this one character, this alien character that she's trying to understand, communicate with on some level. And that's the episode. And you see some stuff, of course, that when you go back to the ship and stuff.
Well, you got
But
the Uhura
you
storyline.
actually saw her experience something instead of talking about it either before it happens or after it happens, and then not actually showing the actual thing happen.
Yeah, you had the whole storyline with Uhura fudging the numbers, and but that actually paid off for the main story. So
yeah,
no, it was one of the better written episodes of the. Yeah, and you're right. If you're gonna, and the thing is in heavy metal terms, it's that whole thing of like, if you're gonna rip somebody off, you might as well rip off Slayer, right? And like you're gonna, just rip off from the best, and if you're gonna do Enemy Mine, do a good job of it, and they did, and but bringing in and that's where this episode, though, I think the smartest thing that they did was bringing in the Metrons, and I think it's a smart thing because, and whether it's unfortunate for La'an and all that is that I think because the Metrons are the ones behind the Gorn confrontation with Kirk. So if we know that and we're setting that up, we have a reason, we have a way, and I do think it's different from Burnham because Burnham was classified. Everyone still knows that Burnham led the mutiny and did all that. Burnham still exists in history. But what I think the Metrons are going to do with La'an is completely erase her from the universe. And they're going to reset the whole Gordon situation because it's not just that La'an doesn't make sense, it's that the Gorn don't make sense because Kirk and Spock don't remember the Gorn. They don't know anything about the Gorn. And I think that they're going to have to deal with that in canon, and having La'an make a choice where it's all the way back in her character that she has hated the Gorn since she's a child. It makes story sense that the last arc of her storyline will be her making a decision, basically communicating with the Metrons. I will sacrifice myself, but take away this conflict between the Gorn and the humans because we're going to destroy each other. And her making a heroic sacrifice is the only thing that makes sense. Now, we can mark this tape this day.
Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens, because whether the Strange New Worlds writer, I think that they set this up with this episode by having the Metrons show up, but we'll see. And but as far as like, I thought all this stuff with the Gorn was, and Ortega's was really good character work, and Melissa Navia was doing really great work playing Ortega's in this episode. I thought it was one of the best written episodes of the season. I still think the high point of the season was episode 1.
Yeah,
but
me too.
I think it was good. Issa, Sarah and I have done a little bit on this episode. You haven't said anything yet. But
I thought it was fine. It was very Enemy Mine, which I feel like I've now said 100 times. I'm sorry. But the shooting of the Gorn was just so predictable that I was sort of just like, okay, obviously that's going to happen. Like nothing about this episode was it was all very predictable. That's just all I'll say about it. I liked it fine. It was good, but it was just, I'd seen it before, like it didn't really do much for me because I'd seen it before.
Yeah. I was excited to see the Metrons in there. I thought that was a cool thing.
That was a nice touch at the end there, because that could lead somewhere. Whether it leads to what you're suggesting, I'm not sure, but it leads to something for sure.
Yeah. And then it would make sense why the Metrons would try again later and say, like, okay, now we're just going to put Kirk and this one captain, this one obviously old decrepit Gorn, who's not nearly as healthy as every other Gorn we've seen, but whatever, sure. He's their smart captain, whatever. Any other thoughts on this episode, Sarah, before we move on to the finale? No. Okay. So the finale, New Life and New Civilizations. This is the only episode I have only watched once. So you guys probably remember a little bit better than me. Obviously, the Pike storyline is basically a remake of Inner Light. Yeah, and
I thought they were going to sneak a flute in there somewhere, but they didn't. So
yeah, there's some interesting things going on there, but then the bringing back of Gamble and then setting him up with Patel. This storyline, that part of the episode just really felt rushed.
Oh my God, rushed isn't even like the right word. Like, what is 1,000 times stronger than rushed? Like, this episode should have been spread over like the whole season. Like, there's the scene where they're in the medical bay and they're in sick bay, and Patel explains that since she's gotten a piece of these various whatever, like Illyrian blood and Gorn, whatever, like now she's the protector guardian of whatever. Like, she explains this ridiculous sounding thing, and everyone's like, yeah, that sounds about right. I believe that's what's happening. Like, it was the worst example of that I've ever seen in anything.
Well, and you missed an opportunity to have Battelle be this kind of badass, like, new thing that scares the shit out of everyone, including Pike. Wouldn't that have been interesting, you know?
Yeah.
Well, it would have been a better, that particular scene would have been better if it hadn't been coming from her. Because if somebody else told her this is what has happened, she'd be like, no, that's crazy. That I'm no,
Right.
I want to be a captain. I want to go back to work. This is my life. And then she ultimately has to accept that that would be so much better. But the fact that she instantly was like, yes,
Yeah,
this
exactly. And everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that sounds good. Yep, sounds right to me. Cool. That's what's happening for sure. There's no
but
other explanation."
or get her, have her be hit by the lightning again and then have her get it
Yeah,
because she saw but like just putting that I hate the fact that with as much as they complained that, oh, Discovery, made a warp core out of mushrooms or whatever, all of this very believable science that they
sure.
complain about, when they actually do this really hokey bullshit
So
that
hokey.
is 100% coming from Marvel movies and its influence,
Totally.
unfortunately, on its cult. And I know that Issa is a Marvel person. When
No, but
Marvel
but you're
is
right.
good,
It's a
right?
different genre.
Occasionally Marvel is good, right? When Marvel, like the first season of Jessica Jones,
That's
amazing.
yeah,
Oh my
perfect.
God. But like, what if you're gonna do Marvel, do it fucking right because you're not Marvel, you're Star Trek. You're supposed to be better than that. And so the fact that they went full Doctor Strange on us, and it sucks because they finally did something with this character. They finally did something with a female character that wasn't about their love interests. And it was good, but they fucked up the full delivery.
Yeah, they had to have been. They clearly had been planning that the whole time. Why didn't they just build it up over the whole season? There was so much wasted shit that could have
Because they
been
don't want people to
gotten rid of.
complain that it's not episodic, because that was their whole like, oh, I want episodic Trek. But you
Totally.
know what? When you get 10 short stories, when you no longer can do 25 short stories, it's
Yeah.
not the same.
Yeah, no, totally. And I was just so mad when that scene happened. I was just like, this whole season has been even made worse now that they had a pretty cool plot. And if we just pretend for a second that they'd spread a little bit of that Venga, what was that what they were called? The Venga boys? Venga? If they'd spread that out through the whole season, it would have been so much better. Like just there's so much more. That was a good storyline. They were the good. They would have been a good big bad for this season, but instead we got all this other crap.
Right. Well, it's funny because it is just completely lazy storytelling. It is um I hadn't thought about it being super Marvel, but you're right. It is incredibly Marvel about that. And hi,
It's
Captain
not even
Janeway.
Marvel. It's more DC. Like it's just like not a lot of thought went into it, and they just did something and talked about it.
Right, right. Well, listen, and the other thing that's weird about and listen, it's funny because I like Battelle as a character and I think the actor was just fine.
Yeah.
But the other thing that they're doing is really setting up a weird situation for the whole Mina situation with why Pike ends up in an eternal romance with another woman than Battelle. Like that
Totally.
becomes like a weird thing too, because I kept thinking about that too. Like
Yeah.
what they really should have been doing is setting up some residual like Mina thing
Yeah.
throughout this whole time.
That would
You
have
know?
made a lot more sense.
To be honest, I kind of hope that if they're, since they've torched canon so much anyway, I kind of hope that they get rid of the Mina thing. I'm sorry. Part of it is that the actress that they chose for the initial Mina scenes with our Pike,
Yeah,
like she's a little bit too young for him. I hate it when they do that.
yeah,
And now he's much more mature than he was at the beginning of the season or when he was in Discovery, and older too. And so it's more like, give him, if you're going to give him another love story, fine, but give him an equal. Give him somebody that, because the Mina storyline was always weird and a little creepy.
yeah,
And it's like, is there a way to do that right? I don't know. And if they do it right, it really shouldn't be about saving her from ugliness. Like, I mean, one of the things
Yeah,
that
totally.
US things like, oh, isn't it true? You know, the worst thing that a woman can imagine is having to be ugly. It's
Totally.
just, oh,
Yeah,
oh,
I hear what you're saying on that too, but as far as I mean, there are ways they could deepen that story between now and then, and like, but the whole having him have this kind of eternal relationship with Patel thing, like, really sets it up for being weird that he would feel right moving on, right? You know?
yeah. Or that his fantasy would be this young girl after having experienced that. Because you know what? You just gave, I'm gonna assume, like, I assume that he got that flash of like what he was going to miss out on because she becomes the statue, or what their lives would have been like, or whatever, and like the
It
knocking
was
on the
their
door
reward. It was their
represents the
reward
choice that he
for her.
had to make or something.
My
But
wife just came in and she's laughing at us because we're talking about the horrible show.
But that's the thing, you can't give him that. You can't give him the inner light experience and then tell us that his fantasy in the afterlife of sorts would be to have this escapism with this girl who looks like she's about 25. No, don't do
Yeah.
that to us. I hope they don't do that to us. I'll be so mad. Oh my God.
Well, I think we're ready.
I've got some bad news for you, Sarah. I don't
Yeah.
know about this.
Well, the thing is Pike's he's going to be out of time too. So whether she's younger or older or whatever, like, he's not going to be. That I can live with, but I just have a hard time factoring in that he wouldn't be like to the Telosians, like that he wouldn't be like, hey, can you put me with Marie, like, you know, um, and then that was her Batel's first name, right? Is
Yeah, Marie
yeah,
Patel.
okay. So
And then he's supposed to have these kids that don't exist now, and how sad
Yeah,
that would be.
that was so sad. Like the dog, the kids, they're just gone.
Fuck.
well, but we've already been through that with Inner Light and all that,
Sure.
and
But
that,
that's
you know,
a
and that
little
goes back to the unspoken thing, is because Next Gen has the episode where he has that, where Picard has that relationship with a woman who's temporarily on the ship, and he's playing flute with her and all that, and they never say, hey, I was on this other planet for a whole lifetime and that's where I got this flute. You know, he just plays the flute, and then those of us who've seen the episode are like, oh, that's really sad that he's
right.
playing this flute by himself,
And
you
it
know.
matters that one of the reasons why the inner light works so much is that it's not his life. They didn't take his
Exactly.
life and give him a fake life with, say, Beverly, that, and then he wakes
Yeah.
up and like, oh, Beverly, you and I worked together for this whole
Totally. It
decades.
was fake. Exactly.
It
It
was
was
all fake.
right. It
And
was someone
and
else's
so,
life. That's totally
but they
different.
were real people. So he could still
Right.
miss those people and still miss that life. But they
Right.
didn't take his life and do that to him. So this
Yep.
is very different.
That is
Very
totally
different.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that regard. I mean, it is, yeah, kind of
And
repeating the
I didn't mind that in this show. If you put aside the thing that we were just talking about, that scene worked out fine. I mean, like it was, again, it was obvious what was happening while it was happening. I didn't mind any of that. I just wish that that was like the worst battle you know, between like the bad guys and the good guys ever. You know what I mean? Like Pike gets shot or whatever the thing does to him, and then he kind of goes down on one knee. So the Guardian woman just turns her back on the bad guy, and is like, "Pike, are you okay?" While the guy just stands there doing nothing, and then later she's able to defeat him with pretty much no effort. Like it was so like that was just poorly done.
lazy. Yeah, very.
So
Also,
yeah.
the speech about her saying I'm good was
Yeah.
not, I'm
But
kind.
you can imagine how that could have been built up over the whole season and would have paid off really well without too many changes. Just at the end of the season that they had, it was just ridiculous.
Right. And
Well, and
show
it's
it.
part of,
Again, show it. You don't
Yeah,
have to tell us that she's good. We know. We
totally.
get it.
well, and part of the thing they could have built up to it is one thing that would have been interesting with Patel is if she, she got Gorn DNA. She barely lived. She had like all this stuff. If she was willing or ready or wanting to not go on, and Pike was having a hard time dealing with that, that would have been a really interesting
Yeah,
storyline for Star Trek.
totally.
You know, because if she was like, if he was like, I'm not ready to let you go, but she's like constantly like, hey, you know, you need to accept that this might not work out, and they'd done that a little bit more, it would
Yeah,
have been better, because then you could have had her make the decision like, hey, this is a pretty good alternative for me, so you need to get over it, right? Like,
yeah.
instead of her saying
Anything would
I'm
have been better.
good, if
We
you
could
you
rewrite
wouldn't have to
this so
say
much
it,
better.
you just we'd spend a whole season being like, oh, now she's in a place where she's happy about what happened to her, and then
Well, and like
nothing has to be
she
said.
they built up all this thing where like they couldn't be together because she wanted to be captain. They couldn't be together because she wanted to be captain. You want to tell me that she's happy being a fucking statue? I would have questions. I'd be like, so am I sentient and alive and awake while I'm in the statue? What am I doing in the statue? Like, do I just sort of activate when they need me? Am I dead? Like, what? I would have questions before I signed up for that. Okay.
It's a
Right.
form
And
of
if you'd spent the
immortality.
whole season with her like ready to go, like not being happy, then you get the alternative. And then also there's that dynamic with Pike, who's like, then she'd be like, listen, you don't have much time left either. I don't know why you want me to live. Like, one of us is gonna go first. So like,
If she still had the Gorn threat, right, where she wasn't going to live and she was
yeah,
going to become a Gorn and her only choice was to become a statue, that
Yeah,
makes
perfect.
sense.
Yep.
That
totally,
totally makes sense.
Yep.
totally. Also, but
I
just
think we just fixed season 3.
well, all those things are good, and then if you just spread all that info out through the whole season, like when they first meet the statue, they scan it and they're like, "That's weird. It's Marie,"
Yeah,
or
see, and if you
whatever.
had like an overrunning showrunner like how Andor had Tony Gilroy, who, because one of the things about Tony Gilroy doing Andor was is that he was able to look at the entire map of the season and say like, oh, I need a scene here. I need
Mhm.
this here. And one of the things that this season didn't do is they didn't have somebody overlooking everything, being like, okay, Patel needs to do this in this episode, and this
Well,
needs to
that
happen.
is super obvious in hindsight.
Yeah. In hindsight, it's obvious. And that's one of the things of like, it's really interesting. I mean, um, Tony Gilroy did like a bazillion podcasts promoting Andor that are all like very instructive for writers. And I've watched every single one of them. And one of the things that's real obvious, it's real funny because his brother won an Emmy for writing one of the episodes, but it's like every episode got Tony Gilroy. And like it's clear with Andor that there's like one guiding overall voice. And that is, I think, Star Trek, they need stronger showrunners again.
Yeah.
It is weird
Yeah,
because
you
it
got
is
to
a
have
very
like
similar. Go ahead, sorry.
equivalent of a creative director who's sort of like, a director of like canon or overall vision or something like that to make sure that this shit all makes sense. Because again, I am not the person who gets enraged about canon, but I want it to be consistent within itself. Even if it was consistent within itself per season, I'd feel better about it.
Well, listen, they know, because they have been very clear that season 4, they're really going out of their way to say season 4 is a much stronger season, that they were in a better place. They're already filming season 5 right now. So and
Like, luckily, because if this had been at the end of like something where they had a break, this show would got canceled. Like, this would have been canceled 100% if
well,
they
they
had.
already got less episodes than they were planning. So, and that could be a result of season 3.
Well,
Yeah.
and I've unfortunately, since Discovery has come out, I have learned that, not all Discovery fans are like us there, or not all Star Trek fans are like us. There are a lot of people who just don't really question this shit and they just kind of accept it, or they want nostalgia so bad that's all that they want and they don't engage critically otherwise. And People are very easily pleased by the bamboozlement. And I feel like this show, I've said before, I feel like this show is sort of the Star Trek for people with minimal attention spans. And when you do have an attention span, you're just screaming at the TV because you're like putting all the pieces together. None of it makes sense. And you're like, what the fuck? What are you doing?
And I personally thought season one of Strange New Worlds had one bad episode, and I liked season one a lot. I thought
Yeah.
it was great.
I do
And
think it is the show's strongest season.
yeah, and I could even handle, even though I did not like the racist Spock being human stuff, I at least laughed at that episode, and I at least thought it was funny. But this season, when they did those canon breaking, terrible, racist, it just didn't work. And
I don't think you laughed at that episode because I remember distinctly when we were talking about that
okay, I
episode.
probably
No,
hated that
you
episode.
were like, what are they doing? Because
Yes,
it was
I
actually a
probably
very
did.
cringe episode.
And but I will say it was not as bad as the 4.5 Vulcans version that we got this season in
Very low bar.
retrospect.
That was
Very
the
low
low
bar.
point. That was
Yeah.
definitely a low point. Oh wait, I have to say that the whole thing about doing the mind meld so that Kirk and Spock could fire the phasers at the same time to hit the thing, and somehow that magically opened it, was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. Like, except I think they tried to make a Ghostbusters Easter egg in there because
Yeah.
the phasers were set to anti-protons, which is what the crossing the streams was or whatever. So
Yeah, that was real bad. Although I did like the scene of them playing chess together.
yeah, that
Um,
was.
yeah.
My wife said, "Is that the thing that Sheldon and Leonard play on whatever on Big Bang Theory?" And she thought that was funny. So
Yeah.
she knows the results of the nerd culture, but she didn't know where it came from.
Right. Well, and the very first scene of Kirk and Spock in all of Star Trek was them playing 3D chess in the second pilot. So, first scene they were ever on the screen together. Although, of course, Man Trap aired first, but that's besides the point. So, yeah, overall, I hated this season. I think that we shouldn't totally feel safe that season 4 is going to be perfect. We know they did the Muppet episode, which, again, a short track. I'm fine, but and
You're
I
telling
gotta
me
If,
season
as
4
long
has
as
a
it's
Muppet episode?
self-contained, if the Muppet episode is self-contained, they can do whatever they want with it.
yeah.
It's when they carry that energy out into episodes where it does not belong and does not fit, that's when it doesn't work.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on with the whole Muppet thing, but I wouldn't be surprised if they in a panicked mode went back and rewrote the episode to have it have less time and space because people did not have the reaction that they thought they would to the Muppet episode idea.
I really wish that we didn't, you know, I really wish we didn't know as much going in because again, this is why we have these problems because everything's being focus grouped now. Everything's being made to respond to how people are responding. But
Yeah.
I remember when they would just allow a show or a movie or whatever to be somebody's unique vision. And then
Right.
when it came out, that's when the thing would be judged. And maybe we'd get a couple of leaks, but we know entirely too much now about stuff coming out. When they do
And
all
I
these
think
Comic Con,
the Muppet episode in a 26 episode season, whatever. But when we get, especially now that we know the last season is only 6 episodes, it's like
Wait, is 5 the last season?
5 is the last season and it's only 6 episodes.
Huh. Okay, strange.
Yeah.
I don't mind. I don't mind. The thing is, the reason why we have 10 episodes now is because we went through that whole phase where we had the golden age of television, followed by the new golden age, followed by and so on. But what happened is the reason that we had those new golden ages is people really said, hey, what if we make a TV show that has the complexity and production value of a movie? And they kept doing that. And while they were doing a good job of it, it worked. But now that they are, now that every fucking show has to be a major success in order to stay not canceled, they're homogenizing it, they're focus grouping it, and they're not allowing shows to have their own unique identity. They're not allowing characters even to have their own unique identity. They're having characters respond to how they would be seen by people who make internet comments instead of how they would feel true to themselves as characters. And it's so sad to watch, but this is what happens. Hypercapitalism, man, it's fucking everything up.
Absolutely. All
Yeah.
right. Really quickly, there is footage from season 4. We saw one scene. And Issa, you said you watched it too. Sarah,
I
you
watched it.
I
Did
watched
you watch
it.
the clip?
It was just there. It just existed as a scene.
Well, see, that's better than last when they did this for season 3. They showed the Vulcans walking down the hallway with their, and everyone, and that was terrible. So at least this one wasn't terrible, right? And they thought this was the one scene from the entire season that everyone needed to see to get excited, was to watch.
I think they need to realize that it's not the thing. I think they need to stop talking to marketers who think, well, if it gets memed, you've done a good job. That's not true anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that they need to just, chill out and instead of thinking, gee, these will make great memes, say, gee, this shows us telling a good story. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Good thought.
Sarah, did you watch the trailer for Starfleet Academy?
I did. I was actually very excited about that because we
Me
have
too.
Tilly in there. We have fuck.
Paul
Perimenopause
Giamatti.
brain fog thing is very real.
The what?
The brain fog thing in perimenopause is very
Oh, yeah.
fucking very
Yeah.
annoying. What's her name? The comedian.
Oh, Tig Notaro.
Yes, thank you.
Tig
She
Notaro.
was amazing in Discovery, and so I'm so happy that they managed to talk her back into it to be in Starfleet Academy.
Especially because she has zero idea what anything in Star Trek means. And then she's talked about that like she's like, I don't know half of the things I'm saying. Like, I just don't even know what it means. And then, which is hilarious.
Maybe she secretly fucking loved the experience, and so that's how they managed to get her back.
Yeah.
I think you might be kidding. I'd be surprised if she isn't a Star Trek fan.
You're right. It's true.
Well, yeah, it could be.
It does fit the type.
I know that she's vegan because I saw her talk about being vegan one time. So Issa, we have that with Tig Notaro.
I saw her she traveled with Weird Al on a UHF tour, like live watching of UHF and talking about it. So who likes Weird Al and doesn't like Star Trek? Come on.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah, I like the trailer. I love that the Doctor is back. I think Robert Picardo is a great ambassador for Star Trek. I love how much thought he has put into what an 800-year-old computer program would feel like. Who's spent 800 years trying to live through. And then I like the idea that because Holly Hunter's character, the captain on the show, the commandant of the academy, is from Pelia. She's half Pelia species, so she's long lived too.
Yeah. But she's such a great actress. Like it would be like, getting Helen Mirren or something to show up on Star Trek. Like, very exciting to have her.
Yeah. And Paul Giamatti playing the villain, of course. And I think the fact, it's been breaking everyone's brains that there appears to be a character who's a Jem'Hadar in Starfleet Academy, and it's like, guys, this is 800. This is like 500-600 years later, and they're like, whoa. Is she using Ketracel White? Just wait, and we'll find out. But they are already filming season 2. Bob Picardo, I know he's on the show, so he could say this, but he talked in an interview recently about having seen the first episode. They screened the first episode in a theater for the cast and crew, and they are pretty excited about it. I think Starfleet Academy is going to be good. I like that it's breaking the mold a little bit, that, they're, and I'll be interested to see what they do in a post Discovery timeline. That being said, I also don't understand why they haven't greenlit Star Trek Legacy, and they did a perfect backdoor pilot for it, and I would love to see it.
I think that maybe one of the reasons why Starfleet Academy is giving such good vibes is that it is good for Star Trek to be coming out of the box as an underdog, because
Yeah,
when they announced that show, there was so much hate in the comment section. People were not excited at all. I was excited, of course.
yeah,
Um, Normal people were excited, but the standard, peanut gallery of uh, angry men was very loud. And so I feel like Star Trek is at its best when it has something to prove. And when they bend over to the fans and give the fans what they want, we end up with Strange New Worlds, which, is an extremely flawed show that makes me miss Discovery. And again, all of these actors are amazing. I love them all. I have posed with them at Comic Cons and stuff. And so it would be very embarrassing for them to know how frustrated I am that they are not being put to better use.
yeah. Well, and I think I'm excited to see Starfleet Academy jump out of the box and do something different. And I thought the trailer looked good. All the early stuff I've seen looks good. But I am very pro. I still think the best season of modern Star Trek is season 2 of Discovery. I think the Red Angel season is the best.
I think the first season of Discovery is my favorite season of the new Trek.
Yeah, for me, it's season 2, and that's the one that I can go back and rewatch. And I actually, especially now, I like Pike. Pike before he saw his fate is really great captain, and I actually, I think it's good acting on Anson Mount's part that Pike is very different after having seen what his fate was. But I really like the interaction between Burnham and Pike in that in season 2 before, you know, and I think Burnham's a great character, and um, this paper that I went to, Anya James Jameson, who's media critic from what university she's at. She did the paper on the computer on the evolution of the computer on Star Trek. It was all about the evolution of the computer on Star Trek, and she did say that she has her license plate on her car is Luxwana. So she's very pro Majel
Amazing.
Barrett, um, but she was also like gave this great talk about the computer on Star Trek, and so I am hoping to have her. I talked to her about potentially coming on and doing our Starfleet Academy episode with us. So when we get there, she's also one of the founders of the Octavia Butler Society. So very cool,
Very cool person.
very cool person. And her paper on the Star Trek computer is hilarious because the first slide was literally a picture of Burnham, and she said something like, "I will accept no hate." Um, on Burnham, and that was great. So I was in the audience doing this when she was doing that. I appreciated that, and I recently rewatched part of season 5 of Discovery, and it was way better than I remembered. And I was probably more critical on it the first time. Um,
That's the other thing is that when I watch these episodes of Strange New Worlds, it feels like, the thing about making stuff for a focus group is it feels very much done on the whims of whatever somebody happened to be feeling in the comment section that day. And I feel like people just need to step back from the fan response, and make their art and then, go back to
Yeah.
it or whatever. I realize that's really hard. But the thing is, when you watch Strange New Worlds, you don't think this will be awesome in 20 years. And I never got that feeling with Discovery. I always thought Discovery was going to age very, very well. But I do not feel that Strange New Worlds is going to age well at all.
I think some of the first season, well, I think that first episode with the Gorn, it's episode 4, the one that's the first Gorn episode, I actually think is an all-time banger Star Trek, and I do think that one will hang around. I think the one where Pike goes back to balance the terror, I think is a really good one. I think there's a couple in the first season, but you're right. There's nothing in this season that anyone's going to give a shit about.
Yeah,
in the future. So I agree with you on that.
I haven't gone back and rewatched anything of the new Star Treks, but as far as what sticks in my mind, I remember really enjoying season 2 of Discovery, the Red Angel season, and I really enjoyed the first season of Strange New Worlds. Those were, so if I had to pick my 2 favorites, it would be those, I guess. But
yeah.
It's been a long time.
Well, and it's weird because for a time, well, and I'm actually a weird defender of season 1 of Picard because again, that's me loving the non-Starfleetness of it. The fact that they did a story outside of Starfleet, and I love that. And is it perfect? No, but and for me, like I think the love for season 3 of Picard is a little overboard too, because I
Yeah,
think
I would love to see Legacy, but that the obsession that people had for it when they were also it had those stories had just as many faults, if not more.
yeah. Well, I think the best episode of season 3 of Picard is the 4th episode with the space babies. That was the height of that particular season.
I don't even remember that. I mean, I
Space
remember I saw
jellyfish babies.
You remember?
all I remember is the song. Like that's all I remember of Picard season 3.
And I want to see Legacy. I want to see Picard's hot son, okay? I need that in my life.
Well, and um, I unfortunately it does mean zero good, right? But like the other day, like a whole season of what Legacy could be came to my head, and I was like, oh, that'd be really good. No one gives a fuck what David thinks about what, you know, but I had this whole storyline in my head about like because I was watching an episode with the Klingons, and it was a Klingon episode of Deep Space Nine, and I was having the thought of like, how the hell did the Klingons get such good technology? And I was like, this doesn't make any sense that they would develop warp drives and all that stuff. And then I was like, well, obviously they were invaded by somebody and then they defeated them. And and then I was like, oh, who's that? And I spent all this time imagining Captain Seven like having to save the Klingons from this resurgent species they thought they destroyed. And I was like, that would make an excellent season of Legacy. No one gives a shit what I think. But
I like that idea. That's a good idea.
yeah, well, because imagine the species that the Klingons thought they had obliterated, just like spending hundreds of years rebuilding themselves and then suddenly coming back. Because in the timeline of Legacy at the beginning of the 26th century, that would be good because the Starfleet would be stinging from having not helped the Romulans, right? And then politically, it would make an interesting situation where you got to send your flagship to help the Klingons. And then what would it be an interesting season of Star Trek if the whole thing was the Enterprise G under Seven's command being the one Federation ship that's helping this Klingon armada? That's an interesting story, right? All right. Well, hey, Paramount, give me a call. Terry Metalis and I need to talk about his enemy mine thing anyways. So, but on that note, what do you guys don't want anyone to find you, so I don't have to do that. Like
Yeah.
usually with guests, I have to be like, you definitely want to be found and you want your shit sold, but
Yeah, I'm not
I'm not
promoting
selling
anything.
anything, but
Yeah.
people are welcome to follow me on Facebook for my rants. I'm either
yes,
ranting about Star Trek or I'm ranting about men. It's great.
yes, I enjoy your rants.
I also enjoy your rants there.
Even if my half of the species is often indicted, I usually agree with them. So,
Very
um,
wise.
yes. Well, here's the thing, folks. I'm think the next episode of this here podcast may be Ken Liu talking about his new novel, Everything We See or Seem, which is a great novel about AI, modern novel about AI. And if he does not come on my personal podcast, he is coming on the Live Dickheads podcast coming up. So when this airs, you'll have a week and a half to. That's a live podcast, so you got to be there when it happens. But that book is incredible, so I definitely want to put the shout out for that one, Ken Liu. He's mostly known as the guy who translated the Three Body Problem onto Chinese, but he's a great writer in his own right. And but yeah, and I should note that we are Tuesday nights doing live Philip K. Dick conversations, and we have a guest every week talking about other things. So that's happening. But the next episode of the Science Fiction Hall of Fame that is coming to this podcast will be Ray Bradbury's Mars is Heaven. And I've got Peter or Phil Nichols from the Ray Bradbury Center and my homie Judge Mark Rothenberg coming on, who you will know from my Best Books of the Year episode every year, to talk about Ray Bradbury. And then I think we have CM Kornbluth after that. Is really good. So we got good Science Fiction Hall of Fame coming up. That being said, Issa, you and I are probably going to be doing the original Oliver Stone Conan script with Anthony soon for the unproduced screenplays. That'll be coming up. So, and we'll probably next have our bridge crew back together for Starfleet Academy. I believe that's it.
When does Starfleet Academy start?
January? I think it said January when I saw the
January.
trailer.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Soon.
And I'm sorry to the one
cut.
commenter who commented that we did not do Section 31. We are not doing Section 31 because I refuse to watch that again. So
It would be hilarious. I mean, it would be, oh God, again, the brain fog. Remember the show that they had where you have the silhouettes watching bad movies? What was that called?
MST3K, yeah.
Thank you. It would be like that.
Section 31.
We could do a live watching just like that.
Oh God. It was so bad. It was so bad, and I wanted it to be good. There's a good version of a Michelle Yeoh Star Trek movie. There's a good version out there. They just really did not.
It was very painful to have at this time because we needed a good women focused story and we did not get it.
No. And man, they could have done well with that, but they didn't. So there was one person that was like, "Hey, why didn't you do Section 31 on the comments?" And I'm like, "Damn it, why did you notice that?"
Funny is we've now had two episodes of Strange New Worlds that could have been Section 31 because they're like, oh, we're gonna do this mission off the books.
Yeah.
And it's like, isn't that their whole job?
Yeah.
That's what I thought we were getting. I thought Strange New Worlds would be about, off book missions, man.
Well, in Section 31, if they had gone the Andor route with Section
God,
31,
imagine that would be amazing.
yeah. I guess it could still be done, but again, Paramount, call us.
They need real comics to come in and say, look, Star Trek is amazing when they do comedy well, like in Star Trek 4. But comedy is actually really, really hard. And I don't think that people get enough credit for that. It's really hard to do right. So therefore they should, if they're going to do comedy, take it fucking seriously and do it right.
Yeah. And there's all kinds of great examples of comedy. I think Little Green Men and DS9 is unbelievable. Cupid and TNG, Captain I Protest, I Am Not a Merry Man, like there's great moments of comedy,
Totally.
And part of that comedy came from characters being so much themselves. And if you don't have that, you don't have a foundation to build funny on. And because the characters in Strange New Worlds are such blank slates, you can't build comedy off of that.
Oh, one of the greatest comedy moments of Voyager, for example, was the episode where they saw the Doctor's daydreams, and and
Yes.
he had the emergency command hologram where he pretended he was the captain. And Ensign Kim's like, "Oh, I love this part," and then all the pips showed up on his uniform, and it was hilarious because it was embarrassing for him, for them to
Yeah.
all see it, and if it
Yeah.
hadn't been good character work, it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
All right, we went really long. I knew this would happen, but on that note,
I mean, it was better than the season, right? Good conversation, much better than the season.
yeah. Well, thankfully we probably won't have that long for season 4 of Strange New Worlds 2. I think it'll be next summer, probably. It's already in the can, apparently. And they are filming 5, the last 6 episodes. So we'll
Cool.
find out soon enough if I'm right about Lahan. And oh, there is one other Star Trek thing going out there, by the way, now, which is the audio drama about Khan. And I will say I have listened to some of it, and it does not need to exist, but it is pretty good. I will say it does not need to exist, but there are I will say, just to put this out there, that Tuvok and Sulu are in it. So if that means anything for you, that it in the first episode, Tuvok, Tim Russ, and George Takai do make an appearance in that audio drama. So the Excelsior is there. So on that note, folks, it was great. Again, talking to you guys. Sarah, it's late there, so I want to make sure you and Captain Janeway get to bed on time, and we'll see you again in the future. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.